I have heard also a lot of stories from women about sexual life. That they were complaining about their husbands, that when they have sex, that it ends for the men with the moment of orgasm, and they sort of turn away and start snoring, whereas the woman sort of lies there for half an hour and feels that there should be more than that. So I have seen many men who had these powerful experiences, not just with psychedelics but also with the breath work, that they move very much in the direction of these kinds of values, more interested in human connections, developing in the sexual life, developing what I call either oceanic or a tantric kind of attitude towards sexuality. It seems that we both have, and a lot of Jungians emphasize that both have the masculine and the feminine aspect, and that ideally we would sort of own both of them and sort of be able to be comfortable in both of those modes and choose them according to the circumstances. And in our culture, you frequently see imbalance. You can see women who are too masculine, or you see men who are too soft. So if anything, this kind of work can do is that it creates a new balance. In other words, moves masculine women to more femininity and feminine men to more masculinity, because usually that's a result of some kind of traumatic experiences in the past that they can work through. I've seen people sort of going through life constantly pursuing some goals in the future. It was never about being sort of here, being present and enjoying what is happening. It was always something better is going to come in the future. And I've seen even people who had a very, very high ambition and expected some fantastic things from it, and then when they reached it, the next day they became very profoundly depressed. Joseph Campbell said about this kind of thing, it's like getting to the top of the ladder and finding that it's against the wrong wall. It's not what I really wanted. So many people pursue things with tremendous conviction and ultimately find out that those are not things that they wanted. You cannot get enough of what you don't really want or don't really need. We have our own Western input, which was through psychedelic experiences. This was something that came from Switzerland, that came from Europe and into the United States. But certainly, so that was just one part of the input into transpersonal psychology. Another one was the Maslow's study of spontaneous mystical experiences, peak experiences, and his recognition that it's absolutely wrong to see them as psychopathological phenomena, that if anything they are supernormal phenomena if they are properly understood, properly supported. And then the rest of it was also influenced from the various teachers who were coming when there was this response and there was this interest in the United States and in other technological societies. There was suddenly an influx of these influences, the teachers coming and offering workshops and retreats, even establishing monasteries and so on. A lot of Tibetans, for example. So I don't think this was one-sided. I think this was, something that was happening from several different directions. I don't think it was just people suddenly responding to Eastern philosophy. There had to be something that created this responsivity, whether it was the fact that the opening happened with psychedelics to many people, or that there was just something about the climate of the 60s in general. I know that astrologers have their own theory about what happened in the 60s, attributed to this major conjunction of Pluto, Uranus, and then later in the 60s also, Jupiter, and it coincided to changes, major changes. For example, going to the moon and getting a whole other perspective on the planet and so on. So I think what was happening in psychiatry, psychology was just one symptom of something that was much larger. I have also been very interested in the UFO abduction experiences, and actually a very close friend of mine who just was tragically killed in an accident in London when a drunken driver killed him, John Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist who did the whole training with us and did some extensive research of the UFO abduction experiences. Almost lost his tenure because he was not treating these people as psychotic and was just listening to their stories. So we have seen many of these kinds of experiences in psychedelic sessions and holotropic sessions. So that was another area I've been interested in, and talking a lot with John Mack and with people who had the UFO abduction experiences, which I think is a very, very interesting area to study. The question is, what is that phenomenon? Because it's rampant. It's very, very common today. There are groups of people who had that, who attend conferences and interact with researchers and so on. There have been sort of government explorations of the phenomenon. I saw a couple of years ago, after they opened the Russian archives, very interesting, I think it was 60 Minutes, or one of the major shows, that talking with these people from Russia about the fact that they had a situation where one of these launching pads, for their rockets, had this visitation of something that they couldn't explain, and that was interfering with their devices there, and they were just a few minutes from actually launching a counterattack because they believed this was an attack to the United States of some kind of a new device. So it's a very, very common, very interesting phenomenon. There were sort of government investigations of that, and usually the conclusion was that either that these people were crazy, or that these were some kind of misinterpretations of natural phenomena, or maybe balloons, or testing of rockets or something. Now, Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, became very interested in this, and he wrote a whole book on UFOs and the objects, seen in the sky. And his interpretation was very interesting, that this could be manifestations from the collective unconscious that would explain the fact that many people independently who really have no communication with each other describe many details when they have these experiences, and there is a consensus about that, which is exactly what happens when people have experiences from the collective unconscious. So those are experiences that would not be then intrapsychic in that sense that it's generated individually in our brain, but we would be tuning into some kind of a field which is there for everybody who gets into a certain state of mind, in the same sense in which when we have radio, we can, here in this room, we can pick up shortwave radio programs from all over the world. Or if we have a television set, we can, there's tremendous experiential potential in this room. The energy is there, the information is there. So for me, the collective unconscious is something comparable to what we have created in a much more imperfect way with our electronic technology. So these experiences would be subjective, but also objective, in the same way as when I'm watching television, it's a subjective experience, but it transcends somehow my own field of awareness. I mean, it's an experience that could be encountered by other people. I always think about it when I go to a shop where they're selling the television sets, and then you have, 50 TV sets and they're showing the same thing, and you realize it's all over the city, maybe all over the United States, and that if you had a TV set on the moon, you know, you would have the experience on the moon. So that we somehow draw too sharp the distinction between what's a subjective experience, what's an objective experience. In our culture, you frequently see imbalance. You can see women who are too masculine, or you see men who are too soft. So if anything, this kind of work can do is that it creates a new balance. In other words, moves masculine women to more femininity, kinds of values, you know, more interested in human connections, developing in the sexual life, developing what I call either oceanic or a tantric kind of attitude towards sexuality. It seems that we both are boring, whereas the woman sort of lies there for half an hour and feels that, you know, there should be more than that. So I have seen many men who had these powerful experiences, not just with psychedelics, but also with the breath work, that they move very much in the direction of these have, and a lot of Jungians emphasize that both have the masculine and the feminine aspect, and that ideally we would sort of, own both of them and sort of be able to be comfortable in both of those modes and choose them according to the circumstances. And I have heard also a lot of stories from women about sexual life, that they were complaining about their husbands, that when they have sex, that it ends for the men with the moment of orgasm, and they sort of turn away and start snoring.